Welcome to my Boulevard.
What's up, everybody? I am excited to share with you someone who has genuinely impacted my life over my time here in Atlanta. Good friend David Dixon, and today we're going to talk about something that needs to be talked about, but is very rarely talked about. I've been it. Let me just kind of break it down for you a little bit. It was about 6 years ago. We went through some stuff here at the church, and I remember coming to David and just sharing some of the stuff that we were going through at the church that had to do with one of our pastors, and it really hit us really hard as a church. And I remember sharing with you, and I remember talking with him, and that just opened up another level of friendship and another level of connection. We met regularly, we talked regularly, we connected regularly, and just. But I just say before we get into, like, you really helped me a lot through that journey, right? Through that journey, just as a pastor, and as a leader, and as someone who, as a man, right? And so we're going to talk about that, and so we're going to talk about just kind of the source, the connection, and so from that, I just want to just kind of first want you to meet. We're going to do this over a series of multiple times, so it's not going to all be today and here, but like over multiple segments, because I named this season Safe Spaces, because I wanted to bring you into some of the safe spaces that I've had in my life, and connecting and being able just to be real. Oftentimes I tell people that I want to create, I need friends and I need people that I can be a heretic around, right? And it's just like, well, I don't have to be on. I don't have to constantly be on, but I can just be real, right? And David is one of those people for me. And so, David, how you doing?
I'm good.
Thank you for coming on and talking
Absolutely.
with us and sharing with us your journey and your story. So why don't you just kind of kick off and tell us a little bit about, like, who you are?
Sure.
A little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So incredibly grateful to be here. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dhati. Born in Atlanta, raised here in Atlanta, born actually at Piedmont Hospital. My childhood was not horrible, and also had some deficiencies as well. So my parents divorced when I was 9 months old, or my dad left rather when I was 9 months old. They fully divorced when I was 8 years old. And I lived with my mom for the first 9 years of my life, and then moved in with my dad when I turned 9 years old, and lived there from 9 into 18 with my stepmom. So I always like to say my parents did the best with the tools they had. By no means is this a time to bash anyone, and I want to be real clear about that. And it's also a time for me to be fully honest about the impact it's had on my life, because as we've talked about, we all start from somewhere and we all get identity from somewhere. And so my journey, the overarching theme to understand anything from here on out, is about identity and where we gain our true identity. And so my identity, I had a mom, just didn't have the emotional tools. Love her to death. We have a good relationship today. But nothing crazy happened. I had a childhood where I grew up with, her, and then seeing my dad on the weekends. But none of my parents poured into me on an emotional level to help me understand how to process emotions and how to process feelings that I had around their divorce and really being left. And that's a theme you'll hear a lot with me, is being left. And it's something I have had to work on in my story, and I continue to have to work on it to be the best version of myself. And so when I moved in with my dad and stepmom, went to, high school at Holy Innocents, and then later went to school at Samford, graduated in 2000 from there. And then the quick is I was in sales, and then got into, for the early part of my 20s, mid-20s, and then I'm now in commercial real estate here in Atlanta, and I've been in it since 2006, so it'll be 18 years next year. But those years that I was living with my dad and stepmother, obviously My dad worked, he's a workaholic, and so that affected us. Very emotionally devoid father, but a great provider. So great provider for the household, workaholic, not anywhere near what someone would want to be able to understand how to process emotions. And we were at church 4 times a week, and we were the family that it looked like this when we were at church, but we weren't really fully able to be honest and truthful inside of our home. And that was a big deal because that set the stage for what I faced later in life and the struggles I had with being honest and telling the truth in my personal life and my interpersonal relationships. And so, that was really, I have 2 half sisters that were both born when I moved. One is 9 years younger and one's 13 years younger than me. My stepmother's a good person, really emotionally, like I go back to emotions a lot because our identity is bestowed on us by our fathers. And so I have a little girl, she's 11 now, she's not so little. But my main purpose, besides loving her, is to give her her identity as a young lady as she grows up into a young woman. Confident, relying on the Lord. That's your pillar. That's what I believe is the pillar of strength, the core. That all comes. And to know that she is loved with a love that is inseparable. I tell her all the time, Poppy, I love you with a love that you cannot separate between us. There is nothing, and this is actually something that came to me last week, and then I'll go back and finish walking through my teenage years. My love for you is not predicated on your obedience. Let me say that again. My love for you as my daughter is not predicated on your obedience. There are consequences if you don't obey, but you can never separate how much I love you.
Right.
I was never told that ever. So when you grow up in a household where your dad works all the time, stepmother does the basics, feed, take you to games, but not really investing and taking time to say, hey, how's your heart? What's going on in your life? How can I walk through the fact that your father and I had an affair and now we're married, and I know that probably affected your life somehow. What can I do to help you walk through the difficulties of that? Those are the kinds of things that a young boy growing up into a teenager needed. So you fast forward, saw pornography for the first time at 8 years of age. There was no internet, no phones, no nothing that we have today. It was a one-time image. And then really where I saw it come in was junior, senior year of high school. We got a computer at our house. I started getting into chat rooms, phone sex, and pornography at our house. And then when I went to college, especially the pornography piece just took off like a wildfire. I would use it as a way to reward myself if I did well on a test. I would use it as a way to numb out if I didn't do well. And so what I now know to be sex addiction that I am in recovery from, that was really the fertile ground for what was being grown. And I think what happens is, the best way I know how to explain it, or at this point of the story, is what my therapist and I walk through. And it's basically like you have a cauldron. We all start with a pot, right, as people. And then what gets put in there kind of gets stirred around. Family of origin, how we're raised, what we're taught. And then different things start happening. Well, as a young man, I didn't receive the identity piece. And so I was looking for my identity, and there was pain around not having an identity from my father. And so I used pornography, sex, and everything in that realm as a way to seek validation, because I never fully got validated for who I was as a person as a young man. And so that is why validation from me to my daughter is so important to this day. Every day, I will text her or call her. Her mom and I are no longer married, but I will let Poppy know I love you for exactly who you are. It could be a quick text, but she's getting it every single day to build that foundation each day. And so you get through my 20s, as a hard worker, did great in school, worked multiple jobs at one time trying to build my real estate career. And when we were growing up in church, it was, you can do everything except have sex before marriage and God will love you. But if you have sex before you get married, God's not going to, this is what I was told in the church of Agrippa, and God's not going to love you. He's not going to bless you. He's not going to bless your business. He's not going to bless your life. So I held out till I was 31, and when I got married to who is now my ex-wife, who is a great mother and a great human being, by the way. You know, it's just, it was just,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
So basically, you were a virgin until you were 31. That's what you're saying.
I was a virgin until I was 31 years old, yes. I pushed that envelope as far as you could push that envelope, but I was a virgin when I got married at 31.
That's
a great way to put it.
Yeah.
I was playing the Christian sex game,
Yes.
so great, but I was doing everything in the background that God's like, he looks at the heart, right? And so that's the other thing I'll say about identity. The reason it's so important is because it speaks to the very heart and the very soul of who we are as people. But pornography, phone sex, masturbation, chat rooms. That was kind of what permeated my 20s. When I was, it's called acting out, so I'm going to say that a lot, but when I was acting out that way, that's what was going on in my 20s.
Okay, so in your 20s, basically, you were actively going to church.
Actively going to church.
Actively connected. You were actively trying to abstain from sex.
Yes.
Because you're trying to please God, the family of origin, represent all of those things. You're going through all of this taking place. You're playing the Christian sex game.
Yeah.
You know, everything but
I'm going to steal that, by the way.
Yeah, so you're doing that. So you are trying to do right.
I'm trying.
You're trying
Absolutely.
to be good.
Yes.
You are trying to be going to church regularly.
Yes.
All of those things, but you felt identityless.
Yeah, I did. I was seeking an identity because I would go to church and hear God is your identity. Okay, and I would think, and I didn't know Scripture in the way that I know it now, because basically I didn't study it. I just was like, go to church, show up, read some Scripture, and hear like Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you, plans for you to prosper and not to harm you. Well, no one ever really, I mean, you heard things taught on it, but that's like given to the Israelites as they're coming out from Pharaoh, right? So it can apply to us, yes, but you also have to understand the perspective of how when God is talking in the Old Testament, you know? And so not having an identity, trying to do the right thing. I later sought identity as I became successful in work. And started to be, I can make X amount of dollars. I can do these deals. And I lived and for you and the viewers, if you know those toolboxes that they have in garages, and all these tiny little drawers and then bigger drawers, I just lived a life that was very segmented by drawers. I would if I wanted to go to church, I'd pull that drawer out, and then I would push it back. If I wanted to look at pornography, I'd pull that drawer out. If I wanted to work really hard, I'd pull that drawer out, and nothing was congruent. It was all segmented off. Whereas one of the things I really work for my own life and to bestow upon my daughter is to live a congruent, transparent, open, honest life. We talk about this all the time, a value system. Live that way so that things permeate through you, and not where you're a person in church and maybe you're only 90% of I'm not talking about living dichotomous lives. I'm talking about I'm this person in church and maybe I'm only 90% of that person when I'm with my friends.
Right.
I try to be the same person all the time.
Right, and that's kind of a lot of that passion and desire was that your 20s when you were that? You felt that you have that kind of conviction in the 20s to do that? Or is that something that you grew because of kind of the stuff that took place? So because in the 20s, it sounded like you were trying to attach onto something that gave you value, gave you meaning, gave you kind of that sense, because you did not get it from your father, you did not get it at home. You got cared for, you got taken care of, you had needs provided, but you did not have that need provided.
I'll put it to you,
the identity.
Yeah, there's some terms I'll use that are getting more and more popular. It's something called attachment style.
Yeah.
So our attachment style is formed as young children, and then is continue to be formed as we're growing to teenagers. And so I have a very anxious attachment style to this day. My current partner has an avoidant attachment style, which those actually match up the best, because you can work with that as long as we understand the other person. But I was so anxious in my late teens in my 20s. It's like I was trying to attach to that center core of what I know now to be the Lord, and that's my relationship with Jesus. But my relationship with Jesus is very different than when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
Now, that's the only way I can get life, is the Holy Spirit putting love, grace, and mercy in me to go out of me. But to do that, I was never trained on this. These are the things that you do, and this is why you don't want to attach to drugs and alcohol, sex, working out. I mean, there's all kind of addictions.
Yeah.
One of my good friends, he'll tell me, David, everybody's addicted to something, just matter what it is. Is it golf? Is it shopping? Is it we constantly have to update our house every 3 years? Is it I got to work out 6 times a week, and if I don't work out for at least an hour, that I don't feel good about myself? What do we do as people to numb out from actually being able to sit in the discomfort of our emotions?
Right. So, okay, so now you're going through, that's a year 20, you didn't have the tools as we
Right.
talked about.
So no tools,
to do that.
looking for something to attach to.
Looking for something attached to, you find the one.
Yeah.
31. At 31.
Yeah,
you
I find
the
actually,
one.
we met at 28 and
Okay.
dated for about 2 years, year and a half, and then got married 31. And honestly, I didn't have the tools to be a good husband.
Yeah.
I just didn't. I was looking to my ex-wife for validation. I was looking to her to fill me up. She had her own things that we lacked, because we all as people lack things, right? And I just remember I thought, okay, playing the Christian sex game, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have sex 5 times a day.
Yeah.
Because isn't that what you do? I waited this long,
You waited.
so
Yay, you
let's
did
go do it,
It's
right?
Time. It's time.
By the way,
Yes.
really unrealistic.
Yes. Yes. Hey, but that's the expectation.
Right. So we get married, we get into some arguments on our honeymoon, not anything crazy. And then we get home, and to her credit, she wanted to go home and sit in the apartment that we had and unwrap wedding gifts. And because and this is important, because of the lack of identity from my father, I have always sought his approval in everything. I fought that for a long time. He asked us to come and house sit while they went overseas.
On your honeymoon?
No, after our honeymoon.
Okay.
We're
This is
at-
after you
after
coming
our
back from
honeymoon,
your
we came home. My ex-wife
Unpack.
wanted to go home
Right.
and unwrap the gifts. And my dad's like, well, you need to stay at the house. And it was phrased that way. And so here I am, approval, just fill my cup up just enough, please. So I chose to stay there. Well, we were there, and we got into an argument, and she walked out and left and went back to the apartment.
Yeah.
And what is one of the first things I said? Left. Being left.
Right.
Not having an identity from my dad, I never had a secure attachment to my family, knowing that they were there for me no matter what.
Right.
So I was always fearful of being left.
Yeah.
She left. It was like a spark went off like that. And I was like, I didn't get married for someone to leave me. 9 weeks later, I was in a hotel room in St. Louis with someone that I had gone to Sanford with having an active affair with that person. I don't have to go into all the details. However, if you ever want to know, I'm happy to meet with anyone and share my story one-on-one. But what happened from that point until 2017, when I went into inpatient treatment for sexual addiction, 3 external affairs, multiple encounters with pay for sex, multiple encounters, massage parlors, and it all blew up on an iPad one night, and it all came to light.
Yeah.
And my ex-wife was like, you need to get out of the house. I don't know what's going to happen. And praise God, there was someone who recommended the best treatment program in the country, and I was there.
How many years was that when the iPad night? How many years were you married?
I was married 2009. I was married May of 2009. That came out in April of 2017.
Okay.
No, 2006. 2017. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
2017.
And so all of this came up, it exploded, it's in that.
I mean, there was sexting that went on with multiple people at any given time. I don't say this, by the way, to run some kind of highlight list. I say this out of a ton of humility, but God has delivered me from any shame and guilt around this because of obedience to seek amends from all the people that I harmed and to actually own my life. That is the only reason I can sit here with you today, is because of the Holy Spirit owning my life, owning my actions, and saying, when I left treatment, when I relapsed in 2019, I will use this story for your glory, however you want to use it.
Yeah.
So in 2017, it was sexting with multiple people, prostitutes, massage parlors, having sex with people I would meet online. I mean, I was in full active sex addiction.
And what did that do for your identity right then in that time? Because
When it blew up?
yeah, because part of your identity was you were a good Christian kid, Christian boy, Christian male. You didn't have sex until you were 31.
That's right.
And so now as you were acting out, like in your 30s now, because in your 20s you were acting out, but it was within the Christian sex game, so you can validate and justify. Now there's no validation, there's no justification. Now that card has been removed from you. And so
what I would say is I built an identity of a house of cards that really, if anyone knew me deep down, I didn't let people get to know me deep down.
Yeah.
I wanted to say I had basically a 10-pound bag of crap that I would share 12 inches or 6 inches from, just right off the top. I'd share 1 pound of a 10-pound bag of crap. And so I didn't let anybody in. And because I was scared to death. It's like, if I become that vulnerable and people know me, then I'm not going to be loved, I'm not going to be seen, and I'm going to be left. Yeah. And everything I did in my life was to build a life so that I wasn't going to have the feelings of being left that I had even at 9 months. The work I've done in recovery, I know, even my 9-month-old self, I know I can't remember, I was affected by my father not being there and leaving.
Yeah.
Babies, that's another topic for another day, but babies feel those things. And so, in my 30s, it was like a house of cards, and you could just go, and the whole thing would have come down. But on the outside, super successful, dressed really well, had friends, invested in other people, but was living a trichotomous life.
So, and that's part of what, so throughout this time, you never stopped going to church. So it wasn't like you had a moment where you're like, God, forget it. If you're not going to be here, you're going to leave. You never, from the outside, it was never something that anybody would have known.
That's right.
And I think that's the part that so many of us, and we were talking about it, and I said, there's so many of my friends and so many people that I've had this story and this journey. But I oftentimes talk about it in the sense of for people, especially pastors and leaders, we're paid, we got from our morality, right, in a sense. And so we get trapped in trying to maintain this outward appearance, right? And our paycheck is tied to our morality.
That's right.
Right? And if we were to ever come clean, then our paycheck is gone, right? And so what that does a lot of times for pastors and leaders and Christian, it makes us go internal, we figure it out. So talk to me a little bit about that. Was there a conviction, he says, I can't do this, and then you would have periods of sobriety and then you would fall back, and or was it just kind of like for those years from 31 until
from 31 until my daughter was born I was 34. So for those 3 years, the first affair I came clean, and my ex-wife and I went to counseling, and we lived what I would say is I white knuckled it. I still looked at porn, I still had phone sex, but I wasn't acting out physically or really emotionally with anyone for those 3 years. Okay. And so our marriage was, I would say, good. I still struggled with this, and I would kind of go on this I'm clean for 6 weeks, 2 weeks porn, phone sex. Oh, I want to repent, God. I'm sorry. God, please forgive me. I'm sorry. I'll never do this again. 6 weeks, bam, 3 weeks now, and kind of writing that. But when my daughter was born and my ex-wife and I went through some miscarriage, like 6 miscarriages, which my heart goes out to all the people who walk through this because it's not easy. There was a night in January, my daughter's 7 months old. We got into a massive fight. I didn't handle it well, and I chose that night to act out with my first escort, and it was January of 2013 for 4 years through April of 17 that it was cyclical, and it just got worse.
Yeah.
Because not to go too far into the addiction world, because that is another topic we can address a different day, I'm releasing dopamine every time. Well, just like a heroin addict or an alcoholic, there becomes a part where the dopamine flatlines. So I could have sex 7 times a day just to try to get the same dopamine that I got the very first time I acted out, and it would never equal itself. And so it just got worse, progressively worse. And so, but all of those actions were tied to the fact that I just didn't feel like I had a safe place, which I love what you called this, and a home where I could be myself and be fully honest, open. And in fact, I was part of a men's ministry that I've told you about at the time. And when I did come clean, they kicked me out. And so it further confirmed why am I going to try to be honest with Christian men when there was no safe place for me to be fully honest, which is why I promote the 12-step community as much as I do, because if you want to be around some of the most honest human beings, go to a 12-step meeting. There are people in there who own their life every single time they're in there. Hey, I did this week. My thought life was this. It wasn't perfect, and I'm here trying to be the next best version of myself.
It's completely different from the accountability groups that I grew up in, like post-college and all that. That was supposed to be a safe space, but it wasn't a safe space, because as soon as the first person came clean, we made it and kick them out. But it was, oh, greater is he that's in you than he that's in me. We give him all the remedies, all the things, all the scriptures. And people genuinely thought they were trying to be helpful, but they were trying to fix. And what that didn't do, it didn't create like, oh man, I want to come back and share my stuff because that's what I want. I just want everybody to focus all their attention on me. And there's this, there's no real room for people to struggle, like to struggle and to confess and to tell the truth and to be. And I think that's why it is so important. And so for you, especially abandonment, like you were in your trauma. And the way I like to define trauma is the inability to make sense of something that happened in the past, anticipating something bad happening in the future.
Okay, time out. Can I interrupt you for just a moment? I love how you defined it. And one of my favorite authors, Pia Melody, she defines trauma as anything less than nurturing. Let that sit in for a minute, especially for the people watching this. We've all been through some kind of trauma in our life. And to go on what you just said, what I was doing, which let me always be, my choices, I own my life, I was wrong, I was trying to use something that God created to join 2 people together in the beauty of what he created. I was trying to use it to self-protect and to numb out from the trauma that I had, the emotional trauma that I had been through. And my stepmother also physically abused me for a time when I was 16, 17 years old. And just trying to make sense of it.
And that's what it says. So I love her definition, because anything less than nurturing, and when that doesn't happen, and it doesn't, it's an inability to make sense of what happened in the past, and now it's anticipating something bad in the future. And for you, was like, are you going to leave me too? You're going to leave me too? Because everybody who was supposed to bring you that nurturing, they left you. They left you, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally. And so part of it, I love how you talk about it, the word is acting out and everything. And so I know we're going to talk about this many more, unpacking it, but let's kind of for this to kind of wrap this time up is how did you come to the place? You mentioned very quickly about going to a center, to
Yeah.
a therapy place.
Let me
but,
kind of
like,
condense the last 6 years of my life,
Yeah.
because it's been since June of 2017, and I'll give the
And I don't want, because we're going to talk and unpack a lot of
we
stuff
could
that happened in
we could
in
have
the
six
6 years.
we could have six sessions
Yes,
just on
yes,
the last 6 years.
yes.
One
So,
session for
right.
each year. So 2017, I go to inpatient treatment out in Arizona, amazing place. I come home and God puts who is now the best certified sex addiction therapist in the country in my life. That is my therapist. God totally arranged that, okay? She's an amazing person. If you ever want to know about her, contact me. You have someone concerned with sex addiction, she's awesome. She's a great person. And she's been in my life for 6.5 years. Come home, start meeting with her, and what I would say is I white knuckled it. I was physically sober, not acting out, not looking at porn, not engaging in phone sex, but I was not emotionally sober. That has taken the last 5 years of my life to become emotionally sober, and it will be a journey until God brings me home. And so I kind of, in the 12-step world, like white knuckled it, like, okay, I'm here. Started dating a young lady in 2018, or back up real quick. My ex-wife and I finalized our divorce August of 2018. I started dating a young lady in October of 2018, and then somehow thought it may be a good idea to date her at the same time and try to get back together with my ex-wife. Don't ever try to do that. That doesn't work. 19, it all blows up again, because I wasn't living an emotionally sober life. And I also wasn't going to 12-step meetings. I was seeing my therapist sporadically, and I didn't really work any kind of what I refer to now as a recovery program. I'm like, went to that in Arizona, check that box. I'm still gonna live in drawers. There are just gonna be fewer of them, but I'm still gonna live this drawered life.
Yeah.
Relapse in 2019, when it all blew up, I called an escort, June of 19, and then I went to a place that I really credit for the sobriety I have now, of being just worked on all of the personality things about me. Like, there's some borderline personality traits that I have, that fear of being left, and this like anxious attachment of feeling like everybody's gonna leave me. And I used to apply this to my male friends, not just the people I dated too, like, oh my God, I texted him and I haven't heard back in 10 minutes. Is he still my friend? Like, I used to operate that way, and some narcissism and some histrionic. Those are the three biggest things that I've had to gain the tools. And this place in Mississippi that I went helped me to gain the tools. It was an intensive outpatient, or what is called an IOP, that I went to, and was there for another 9 weeks and came home. And then September of 19, I really started working a program. Weekly seeing my therapist, going to 12-step meetings, incorporating journaling, scripture reading. And the church I go to, I drove up one day and afterwards, and I was like, okay, God, I cannot do this without you at the core of my life. I walked in, the pastor stood on stage, and he goes, today we're going to talk about addiction. I was like, okay. I've heard from God in my life, but yes, I hear this, and so I walked that, and ever since then I've been at that church. It's an amazing place. He's talked about his own struggles with his own journey of depression and everything in that realm. And so I just knew I was in the right place, and then I just try to do the next right thing. And I've been sober since then, and my current partner now. I did have a slip in February of 22 and had to address that, where it was something where I went and slept with an ex-girlfriend, and I had to own that. It was at the very beginnings of our relationship, and we had to walk through that, and we actually took some time apart. And she knew about all my life. My current partner knew about all my life, but we came back together and have been, it's something we walk through, and she has her own 12-step program that she works for her own stuff. And I think that really helps us, because I have so much love, and a depth of love and mercy and grace that I want to just give her. And there's no shame and guilt. And it's, what I always say is that we have to first love ourselves and accept ourselves and believe that God sees us that way before we can start to bestow that onto another person or offer that strength to another person. So
that's good. So let's end with this.
Sure.
Because some of it can hear, just like, especially some of the people that may be listening, be like, oh, well, I guess what we need is the money to go to addiction programs and all that, but we don't have the resources to go find the best person and those types of things and being able to create. So my question, and what I love that I heard, is the difference between you white knuckling it and having a recovery program. Talk about that.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about
Okay.
that, just the difference between when you say you're white knuckling it and you have a recovery. You're going
Okay.
through a recovery program.
Yeah.
And what would you say are the key distinctives between those two things?
So I live my life from a posture of surrender. This can be another podcast, because I think once we get to the other side, it'll be beautiful to walk through. But as you know, I've been in a season for 8 months where I've had, because of circumstances that are majority out of my control, I haven't been able to talk, see, or communicate with my partner while she's going through a really difficult custody case on her own. And so what God has even further taught me in this season is I have lived my life from a posture of surrender. Instead of white knuckling it like this, it's every morning I start and it's like letting go of the grasp. I even have to offer up my relationship and say, God, this is all yours. Everything under your authority. My 12-step program under your authority. Any help I seek under your authority. I'm not doing anything that operates outside of your authority, ever. I do want to say this to the identity piece, because I think it's important, is that as I have walked a life of recovery and lived a life of surrender to the Lord, and starting each day that way, literally on the floor of my home, there's a circle I have that I get in to symbolize the 7 days that they marched around Jericho when the walls fell. And my partner's in that circle, her girls are in that circle, my daughter's in it, and my business. And every day I start and say, everything in this circle is surrendered to you. Every single thing. I give it to you. And then, you and I had talked offline, but this year I had to face the fact that my dad is trying to join the Catholic Church. And in that church, he wrote on a piece of paper that the reason I want to annul the marriage to David's mother is because we never wanted children. Straight to you couldn't say anything worse.
Right. Yeah.
It basically was the end cap to knowing I was never wanted.
Yeah.
And I had to use the tools to get through that. And one thing I will say to Dhati that's incredibly important, that's been a part of my recovery, is having to draw boundaries around family. And the boundary is, you're not safe to be around. I'm not going to spend time with you, and it's not healthy for my recovery. I don't care if you're blood or not. I can't be around this and live the life that I'm trying to live following the Lord.
Yes. What I love about what you just said, and even the imagery, when you talked about white knuckling, I guess I'll be black knuckling.
Yeah,
But
that's
you're
right.
white knuckling. But doing that, you went from here to here.
Yeah.
And that imagery said the very things that were closest to you, the very things that you love, can do the greatest harm to you.
That's right.
Because you are now put in a place of vulnerability.
That's right.
Where they can literally walk away and they can leave you.
And that's my greatest fear. I need to be honest as I sit here. My greatest fear is when I offer this up and say, God, I give you permission to thwart it. My greatest fear is the person I love the most, that's my partner, because we don't fully know how this thing's going to work out, that she leaves.
Yeah.
And God takes her away. And it's like, but I know that if it doesn't work, I'm not going to go back to acting out, because here's why. The value system that I live my life with is going to be there regardless of if my current partner, if she stays and we get married, or if we don't. I have to rely on the fact that my value system is based on the Father and having a father relationship. And so what's so beautiful in this last 8-month season is I think I put a lot of validation into my current partner. And that's okay to a certain degree. We need people. I'm going to go against the grain a little bit and say, we live in a very independent, interdependent society. All you need is this, all you need. No, we need community. Let me be the first to say that. We need great relationships with people. I need our friendship, okay? I love it. I need the relationship with my partner. I really do. I love to love her well. I love to feel her love. You know what I mean? So there is a part of that where God has refathered me and used my current partner to actually heal parts of my acting out, to where it's like not about intensity, it's about intimacy, true intimacy with another person, meaning understanding and being heard and seen and loved. And what I mean by that is God's refathered me through things like that. But now my true identity is in that core of knowing that I'm loved by the Lord. And though I had a really poor, emotionally devoid and neglectful father, like I said, great provider, really horrible dad. Makes sense?
Yeah.
That God has come in and said, I love you, I see you. He's put amazing people in my life. People like you, people like Mike, people like Cal, you know, people like Jack. All these people, Neil, in my life. God has surrounded me with a group of men that like, we love you.
That's good. And you were able to go from what you said earlier, and the way I think about it, transparency. Transparency is when we learn things about one another, but we can't be heard.
That's right.
To vulnerability.
That's right.
And vulnerability, what you're saying is that the fear, that one of the greatest fears that people can leave, but understanding your base, your root.
Yeah.
That you're not going to like leave because you got a different support system and a different thing. And I think that's
I think
super
it's so great. My current partner said something one time and she goes, we can get through anything as long as you're honest.
Yeah.
And I love that, because I think if we're vulnerable with our community and vulnerable when it is safe, like I know I can tell you anything and you're not going to go anywhere. I just know that about you. Hopefully you know that about me too. I have guys in my life that I do that with, and my current partner, I know like I can say, hey, I struggled today. I really wanted to act out. She'll have fear around it, but we can walk through it together as a team, if that makes sense. Not as a, oh my gosh, you're going to leave. I have to go numb out somehow.
That's unknown. I'm not unknown. It's rare in our communities. And so I'm really looking forward to us unpacking even more, us talking about even some of the tools and some of the things that we have. But I think this is going to be really helpful for just establish a place that I think some of us need, that so many of us are white knuckling it, living lives of even transparency, playing the Christian game, doing enough so that we can performing, but moving from transparency to vulnerability, right? Vulnerability where we can be hurt, you know, but finding those safe spaces in order for us to do that. And so I'm really looking forward to unpacking this, and hopefully we'll get that opportunity to hear not just these episodes, but just even the ones coming up. So again, creating these safe spaces. I'm here with my brother, friend, David Dixon, and so we'll see you later.
Thank you.